Welcome back to No2Nato, No to War. I'm your host, Simeon Boykov, the Aussie Cossack, broadcasting from the Russian consulate in Sydney for the 815th, I believe, today, consecutive day. Hold up inside this diplomatic building. Thanks to the Russian government, we have the ability to broadcast. And thanks to today's platform, we have the ability to reach you all over the world. Millions of people are aware of this brand, the No2Nato brand, which spans across continents, founded in the UK by George Galloway, and very, very well received all around the world, especially in Australia, where we are here today. And that is the topic of today's show. Can Australia be saved? Now, the question is, in the context of what's happening in the United States. Traditionally, generally, historically, Australia has always followed the line of the United States, a line of Washington. And of course, the line of Washington now is being destroyed from within, thankfully and gratefully, by Trump, by Elon Musk, by the Department of Government Efficiency. And in the last 7 days, we've seen a massive dismantling of the cabal in Washington, in America, and all of its proxies around the world. USAID is being destroyed. It's being taken apart, dismantled. And of course, USAID, the organization which provides funding to so many of the United States proxies around the world who have been involved in peddling the narratives of the West, peddling regime change of the West. 9 out of 10 anti-Russian emigre diaspora news organizations and media groups have now run out of funding. Isn't it hilarious? Now, it was about $600 million which USAID had actually allocated to fight Russia through the media, through alternative media, through independent media, so-called independent media, of course. We are the independent media. Well, we're fighting with one hand tied behind our back. We're like partisans in the forest in 1941. We have no support. We have no instructions. We have no communications with the headquarters or the center. No one provides us with gasoline or equipment or anything like that. We're doing it ourselves, and we're winning, right? We are winning. Organic platforms such as this, No2Nato, are winning the informational war up against USAID, who is dishing out billions of dollars around the world, literally billions of dollars around the world. And this is what they've been doing for years. We have become used to this now. We've become used to their tactics, their style of informational warfare. And the greatest thing is that we actually are winning. Now, we were winning before USAID was turned off. We were winning before the Washington great cleanup has begun to occur in the last 7 days. Now that the American government, the new American government under Trump, is now dismantling all of these dodgy CIA money laundering programs through USAID and supporting all of these shonky pro-establishment, pro-Zelensky media groups like Politico and others. Well, what can I say? It's game, set, match. They couldn't win with the billions of dollars in funding. Now they've lost that. Now they've lost USAID. How are they going to win the informational war? How is Ukraine going to win in general? Of course, Ukraine can't win, and Ukraine was never going to win. This was never about Ukraine winning. This was about prolonging the suffering of Ukraine to benefit BlackRock, to benefit the United States military-industrial complex. And unfortunately, throughout the last few years, Australia has been towing the line. Australia has been following in the footsteps of the United States administration under Biden. And now it's a big question. How will Prime Minister Albanese, how will Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Australia, how will they react to what's happening in Washington? They've backed the wrong side all these years, and now that side is collapsing. So what do? Do they admit that we were wrong, as in the Australian government was wrong? Do they admit that people like John Wilson was right, who's going to be joining us shortly, Australian Freedom Union leader? Did they admit that all the mums and dads out there in Australia were right? Millions of Australians who said no to the narrative, who said no to NATO, who said no to everything the government was pushing on us. When you see something in the media, if you automatically have a sense of distrust towards what you're saying, you're probably correct. And now we have that confirmation that all this time there has been a concerted effort. I mean, we knew this, that they were involved in a concerted effort to push propaganda and brainwash the masses to benefit big tech, to benefit big PHRMA, to benefit the big military industrial complex, to continue their forever wars. And unfortunately, of course, the Ukrainian people are ultimately the victims of all of this. And once Ukraine is chewed up and spat out, I've said this so many times, I'll repeat it again, only Russia will be there to pick up the pieces. Now, coming back to the question of today's broadcast, can Australia be saved? This is a big question. We've got a federal election coming up in Australia. We've got some good candidates, some independent candidates. We hear that an independent candidate will be running in the federal seat of McMahon in Western Sydney. That's very exciting. Matt Cameron-Zuli. He's a candidate with backing. But again, I've been warned not to get involved in elections. But I suppose commentating is not being involved. If I was to run as a candidate, that would be involved. But speaking of elections, of course, if you're watching from London and you're joining us from the UK viewership base, we have the British Workers' Party Congress coming up this weekend. It's a big event, guys. If you're in London, head down to the Workers' Party, which we are so fond of all around the world, very popular party. And it's, of course, a British party first and foremost. But it's time to build the party. It's time to expand. It's time to continue the great work which George Galloway is doing. And the Workers' Party is having their Congress on Saturday, the 8th to Saturday, 9th of February in Manchester at the Pendulum Hotel, and that's in Sackville Street. So head down there and tell them the Aussie Cossack sent you. Tell them you heard about it on No2Nato, and take your friends, bring your friends. If you're new to the party, that's great. You can make an appearance. You can meet friendly, like-minded people. This is about taking back your country, taking back humanity. And this is happening all around the world, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Europe. We've got great things happening in Europe now. The ADF party in Germany, very popular. Viktor Orban in Hungary, very popular. Fico in Slovakia. In Romania, we've got more candidates and presidential candidates sweeping to power who are saying no to NATO, who are saying no to the globalist cabal, who are saying enough is enough. And they're running out of options. They're running out of energy. They're running out of any type of contingency plans because they didn't expect this. Firstly, they didn't expect, of course, Hillary Clinton, the Obamas, and the Kamala Harrises and the Bidens. They didn't expect to lose, right? They had always been deceitful. They always cheated. They cheated, but this was too big to rig. Now Trump's in power. And Trump he's done more than the last 7 days. In the last, 7, 14, 21 days than the previous Biden administration did in 4 years. We can see he's dismantling the deep state, like he promised he would, right? But that's all well and good. That's happening in the United States. People are receptive to that. The United States population is enjoying that. Online, it's playing out very strongly, as predicted many times. Elon Musk is becoming the most powerful person in the United States and soon perhaps the most powerful person on the planet, simply because he has just too much at his control. Very clever kid. Got all the communications, all the satellites, all the rockets. His new department in the United States is effectively something which is perhaps similar to something out of the 1930s. This department which oversees all the other departments, more important than anyone, can walk in and smash down the door, walk in and demand documents, demand audits, sack people, appoint people. Very clever. Very clever. Well, what does it mean for Australia, and can Australia be saved? And this is the question we're going to discuss today on this episode of No2Nato. And to discuss the question in the future, to give hope to our viewers and listeners in Australia watching, I'm very pleased to invite John Wilson, the leader of the national spokesperson and leader of the Freedom Union in Australia. John, good morning to you in Brisbane.
Good morning, sir.
Well, can Australia be saved? Let's put it that way. What do you think?
We're in a hell of a mess, Simeon. We are in a hell of a mess. That'll be the first and obvious comment I'd make. And the second one is that we're not going to be able to just vote our way out of this. We're going to have to do a hell of a lot more than just think that we're going to get out of this this mess by way of voting our way out. And I say that because my history, I mean, you know, one of the most heavily fought over workplaces in Australia for 100 years was the Redfern Mail Exchange in Sydney. And also in Melbourne, there's another big mail exchange in Sydney. The National Civic Council, the Catholics and the Communists used to go to war over who would control the mail room floor. And the reason for that is that's where all the ballots were harvested and filled in. That's where all the corrupt voting took place in all the unions in New South Wales, etc. There hasn't been a fair election in this country probably for about 100 years that I'm aware of. The elections have been rorted on a state basis, local basis, and on a national basis. And you can see now with President Trump and Biden and all the Democratic stuff, it's on a international basis, the election frauds that are going on. I might urge everyone is that early days when Hillary was running for a election against Trump first up, the Queensland Labor Party sent at least one or two operatives over to America to participate in that fraudulent election and to learn how it's done and to bring it back to Australia. We're not going to be able to just vote our way out. I'm not saying democracy is not important. I'm just simply saying we're going to have to do a lot more than just think that we're going to vote our way out of this mess here in Australia, Simeon.
Well, we know that Australia is in a tough position, and the Australian people don't have much hope. I mean, we've got an election coming up, but there aren't many candidates. I mentioned one candidate who is a worthy candidate. He's an independent out in Western Sydney, Matt Cameron Zulu. He resigned from the Liberal Party. But to be honest, there's not much else happening at all. There's not much leadership. There is no leadership. People are weak. People are tired. People are depressed. People have been battered in the last few years by the government, starting from the lockdowns. People have been battered. The society which has been created by the Australian government is designed to demoralize, destroy fathers, destroy mothers, destroy children, destroy families.
Yep.
They promote AVOs. They promote family court disputes. That's the way they're set up. But it starts with the GPs and it goes to the counsellors, the psychologists, the police, the lawyers, the judges. And they're destroying this country. And they wonder why people are upset. They wonder why mental health is skyrocketing. They wonder why there's so much problems in the health system from a mental health perspective. They wonder why so many people are dying of unexplained causes. Cancer, skyrocketing. Why? If we're a society which is advancing and moving forward, and we're not a third world country, we're the lucky country, why is life getting worse in Australia? Because it's artificially being done. It's artificially being done. I mean, we have enough money in this country, thanks to iron ore and thanks to our resources. I mean, we own a whole continent, and there's only 27 million of us. Like 27 million is one of the smaller cities in China. One city. We've got 27 million on this great country, which we call Australia. And what have we done? We've destroyed ourselves. I mean, when we say we, the government, it's not the people's fault. It is the people's fault that they didn't stand up in time. But then again, what option did they have? Who did they have to go to? Who did they have to join? Who did they have to sign their name on a piece of paper and join the barricades or join a movement or join, for example, a union? And that's why today I want to appeal to everybody. Stop what you're doing now. Click the link in the description. We'll ask our team in Birmingham and in the United Kingdom. Please put the link of the union. Join the union, guys, especially if you're in Australia. All right, freedom-union.org. It's not hard, but what that does is a union is not restricted as a political party is. The political party is so restricted in Australia, and especially if you're a minor party, which we all would be. We're not part of Liberal and Labor. But they've made it virtually impossible, haven't they, John, for a political solution to go through the constructs of a political change, to register a party, to be faced with election spending capping, right? How can they cap what you want to spend on an election if you're an independent or you're a minor party? Of course, that just suits the major parties who have all the resources. That's how afraid they are of the little guys, of the people. So that's my pitch. Join the union.
Yep.
Right. This is February. In February 2025. Right. I've got my birthday coming up next week. Right. And this is, if you like Aussie Cossack, you like watching his stuff, you've been watching him for the last 10 years or whatever. In lieu of Aussie Cossack's birthday, I'm 35 years old. Don't get me a birthday present. Don't send me a message. Join the union instead. Join the union. And I'll ask John, how many of you joined the union? Because we've got 90,000 people on Telegram. We had on YouTube about 170,000, Twitter 115,000. We've got a large platform. In 2024, combined views on Aussie Cossack's platforms were just shy of, actually not shy, there were more than 500 million. It's a lot of people. 500 million viewers, listeners, readers. Now, with those type of numbers, we should be able to get some change. And John Wilson, I can fully endorse him as a very good, strong, honourable battler. And I know John doesn't need anything, guys. All right, John, how old are you, John?
I'll be 65, mate, in a couple of weeks.
You're 65. You've done your dash. You've had a good life. You're set. You're relaxed. You live on a boat. You live in sunny Queensland. You don't need to be doing this. But I know why you're doing this, because you don't like what you see. You don't like the system. And you want to go out with a bang. Yeah, I know you want to inflict as much damage as possible and before you go. Isn't that right, John? I mean, that's simple as that.
Look, Simeon, everyone's got to know that I'm not a member or affiliated in any way, shape or form to any political party or any group or any society, secret or otherwise, right? I have no affiliations. I only have one agenda, and that's the well-being of a country, Australia, and her population. It's pretty simple to me. Nothing else has worked in this country to hold tyrannical power to account, be it corporate, be it government, or be it international, right? Nothing has ever worked in this country bar trade unions. Trade unions, when they used to do their job, right? When they used to do their job, used to hold power to account. And they're the only thing that has ever done so here in Australia. And so, I've come out of retirement, Simeon. I've brought, I come into this war and into this union with clean hands. So I don't have any excess baggage. I'm not tied up in court cases or anything else. I come with clean hands and I'm offering my services. And the same as the team of the Freedom Union, we're offering our services to our country and to our countrymen. And we intend to hold them to account. I mean, no one else in the country is doing any of this. None of them. It's only us. So please, we are worthy of your support. We can be trusted with the mission. We can be trusted with the budget that goes with having a well-financed union. Okay, we are all motivated by the right reasons, Simeon. And insofar as the global power structures that are in place, we don't have to destroy them. They are now being destroyed themselves. Okay, central banking has been destroyed. President Putin and the BRICS countries, the BRICS coalition, along with President Trump, have destroyed a 100-year-old death cult, which is the central banking system. The enemies at the moment are not the central bankers, Simeon. They are the oligarchs, the same oligarchs, the vultures that were flying around when the Soviet Union came down, and in Germany, East and West Germany, the same predatory oligarchs that are looking to pick over the bones of our country. And they're the real problem at the moment, not the central bankers. The central bankers have been defeated globally. My thanks goes to President Putin and the BRICS countries, all of them, as well as President Donald Trump. We're very lucky to have these two men with us in this world at the moment. Okay, so we are a serious player. all of the unions here in Australia, the registered unions within GovCorp, are all owned by a foreign power. They're all owned by George Soros, Open Societies Foundation. They bribed and corrupted most of them. And those that aren't in the pockets of George Soros and Open Societies Foundation are in the pockets of the Freemasons. The oldest union here in Australia, the Australian Workers' Union, they are the old Shearers' Union. They started the Labor Party up here under the Tree of Knowledge well over 100, 150 years ago. They're all owned by the Freemasons. But all of the left-wing unions, they're all owned and operated by George Soros's Open Societies Foundations or his nominee, as well as others like Get Up. Get Up was started up by George Soros and the Australian Workers' Union. So you have a lot of fake freedom-fighting organisations out there. You've got a lot of fake analysis and information that's being pumped out there. The Freedom Union is none of those things. We are a union that's being built and have been built from the ground up. We are organic. We're a serious player, and we come to the table with a ton of experience, Simeon, and we mean business. We mean business.
Well, I look at it like this, John. I'm a viewer watching at home today, and I'm in Australia, and I'm fed up with what I see in the government, and I'm really losing hope in Australia's future. I'm thinking, can Australia be saved? Right? There is one thing you can do, and this is about joining the union for the sole reason of then you can be at ease with your own conscience, and you can go along with your life, and you can do what you usually do, and you can go to the beach, or you can watch Netflix, or you can go down to the pub and have a chicken schnitzel and have a schooner, which will cost you $11 now because of the cost of living, and do whatever else you do, right? But in the back of your mind, you know that at least you've done something, and at least the cogs and wheels of change are turning, and you've played some type of role. If you do nothing, right? If you do nothing, and I can tell you, there are a lot of people in Australia who do nothing. There is a reason for that, because the government wants you to do nothing. The government wants you to be sitting at home watching Netflix and following government health advice and following government advice on everything else. And the government wants you to get sick. The government wants you to then be going to the chemist every week and having 65 different tablets every week. The government wants you not to see your family and not to have communication. They don't want people to be strong, people to be community-centered. The government doesn't want you to say hello to your neighbors when you take out your garbage bins on a Monday morning. The government wants you to be isolated, sick, and die. I'm sorry, but that's what the government wants. And we know that because that's what the government has shown us. That's all they've given Australians in the last few years. They have used and abused Australians. And to make up for the shortfall in Australia's population, lowest birth rates ever, lowest decline, biggest decline, should I say, in the longevity, in the life expectancy. And instead of addressing those issues, why is Australia gone down this path? What do? They import millions of migrants, driving up rent prices, driving up house prices, delaying the burst of the real estate bubble artificially. And this is all what our government's doing, because our government doesn't care about what happens in 10 years. Our government only cares what happens in the next, in their mandate of 1 to 4 years. That's all they care about. They care about their headlines. And you know what? Every single Australian government minister in Canberra, whether it be defense minister, whether it be health minister, whether it be education minister, industries, any minister, as soon as they leave politics, which they all do, they're very temporary, all of them are temporary, they get a nice, cushy, golden parachute, and they transfer into the private sector. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is what they do. This is what they do. So while they're in power, they don't actually care about you sitting at home. Maybe no one cares about you, right? Maybe no one cares about you. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is in 2025. Nobody cares about you. The government doesn't care about you. The government does not care at all. The government cares about itself, and the government is dysfunctional. Because if there were patriots in Canberra, if we had intelligence agencies and federal agencies who cared about Australia, they would stop Australia from joining AUKUS. that would stop Australia from demilitarizing itself and shipping off all of its weapons and defense gear, its tanks, its missiles, its artillery. I mean, that is treason, John. Right? I'm born in Australia. I'm Russian background. I'm very staunchly pro-Russian. I'm a Russian patriot. I've got a Russian passport. I'm a dual citizen now, thanks to President Putin, who gave me a passport by presidential decree. Thanks to him, but I'm still an Australian citizen, and I feel very strongly about the demilitarization of this country. Every single other major power in the Pacific, namely China, namely India, namely Indonesia, are doing the opposite. They are militarizing at a rate that we have never seen in 100 years, in 200 years, in 300 years, right? What is Australia doing? Well, Australia is saying, well, what else do we have which we can siphon off, sell off, get rid of, bury, export, donate to Zelensky, burying a fleet of helicopters into the ground? These 49 Abrams tanks, John, which Albanese promised to give to Zelensky. We just had confirmation yesterday, in fact, that Albanese spoke to Zelensky on the phone, and it appears that we have now learnt that these tanks have not left Australian shores. These 49 Abrams tanks, and then, by the way, that is the whole Australian strategic reserve. We're supposed to be getting new tanks soon from the Americans, but because there's a global weapons shortage because of these big wars that are happening, we're not going to get those in a long time. Now, these 49 Abrams tanks, which on paper sound pretty formidable, and they should have just left them in storage, because at least then a potential adversary knows, well, Australia at minimum has 49 tanks floating around somewhere. Now, a potential adversary knows Australia has nothing. But the good news is Albanese admitted that these tanks have still not left Australian shores, these 49 Abrams tanks, and they can only sort of plan or expect to have them sent to Ukraine in September 2025. That means that, and this is a question to you, John, you've got the experience with the wharfies, with the unions, with bringing transport systems to a halt, rail, ports, airports. The only people that can do that are the unionists, the very experienced ones, the staunch ones. Right? If we need to stop a certain amount of, let's say, commodities, goods from leaving or entering a port or being loaded up onto ships, you got to speak to the unions.
Yeah.
So, John, I've been purposefully very vague, but it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to figure out what I'm talking about. These 49 Abrams tanks haven't left Australia yet. What do you think?
No. Look, they're vulnerable, Simeon. Australia is an island. I mean, it's an island continent, and you can't get anything in and out of Australia unless you ship it or you air freight it. Air freight's obviously not an option with an Abrams tank. So they've got to ship it. There are many choke points in that supply line to get it off our shores, and union members in small number, but at the right positions in choke points, can certainly interrupt that supply and stop them. I mean, we have a history here. If you go down in World War II, in I think the late 1930s, World War II was on or just starting, down in the port of Wollongong in New South Wales, the waterside workers refused to load pig iron onto a boat to send it to Japan, because they were saying, we're going to send them pig iron and they're going to send it all back in bullets and bombs, and we're not going to load it.
And they were right.
And they were right. And they were dead right. Prime Minister, at the time, Robert Menzies went completely feral. And you've got to remember, Robert Menzies tried to outlaw the Communist Party here in Australia by way of using national security legislation, took it to a referendum, and the Australian people voted it down. You've got to understand that. They voted it down. The Australian people had more confidence in their unions, even though they were communists, and I'm not promoting communism. Everyone knows my position on that. But they voted that down, Simeon. They had more faith in their unions, and they trusted their unions far more than they did their Prime Minister and his government, okay? Unions are before government, before the whole notion of government, okay, there was only trade unions. I mean, all the East India Company and all these trading adventures all around the world is where trade unions originally come from. Okay, they're a very long-lasting, been around for hundreds of years, and they're very, very powerful, propositions. The problem with the parliamentary voting political parties and all of that is that the institution itself is corrupted. It's corrupted. You can't get any reform. You can't get any change. You can't fix anything using the parliamentary system, because not only are the political parties and the politicians corrupt and rotten to the core, but the institution itself is rotten, and you can't get any change that way. So I'm saying to all Australians out there, if you really want to make your point, have any say, any of that, then you need a union. Now, all of those other unions that are out there now are all owned and operated by a foreign power. George Soros, Open Societies Foundations, and or the Freemasons. They are the two big power players inside of the trade union movement. Now, the Freedom Union has none of it. We're not connected to any of it, and we never will. We are not interested, me or any of the team are interested whatsoever in running for Parliament and seeking political office. We are a union. We're going to stay a union, and we're going to do our job and do it properly. And building unions is an ugly business, Simeon. It's tough and it's ugly business. But we have the experience, and I have the experience to pull it together. I've got a mountain of experience, and I bring a lot of that to the table. So I ask people to trust me. I ask people to trust the union and give us a go. Join this union. Join it. It's desperately needed in the Australian landscape right at this moment. Desperately needed. All else that is out there is either lightweight or fake. Okay? We're not. We're not.
Well, that's the thing. People need optics now. People need to see the mobilization of resources, to see change, physically to see optics on the streets. There's no one that can provide that these days. No one, not many people, even people in politics, understand what optics are. Optics is another very great concept, very well used by some people in the 1930s, right, to their advantage and to the disadvantage of others. But most of these guys who are in politics or in media, they simply don't understand optics. Now, optics can be created, can be facilitated, and can be spread to the masses. Yeah. And in Australia, the people are hungry and thirsty for optics. You show them, they will go. You tell them where to go, you show them the path, they will follow. And open the floodgates. Allow the people to feel the power, to feel the change. That's what we need. That's what the politicians are afraid of. Now, as in terms of a carriage to achieve change, the union is a more or less safe option. I'm a person who's often accused by various senators and by Ukrainian ambassadors in Canberra of foreign interference. I refute that. I say, look, I'm an Australian born in Australia. Yes, I'm pro-Russian, but I don't take my orders from anyone overseas, unlike the people in Canberra who take their orders from Washington, from Brussels, from Tel Aviv, other places, and they're completely influenced and interfered with, right? When you talk to the Aussie Cossack or you're listening to Aussie Cossack, you know, whatever you hear is my own opinion, and whatever plans we're making them here on a live, on a broadcast with thousands of people watching all around the world. Some people watching in the UK tonight might be thinking, what are they on about? But it's interesting. This is how change is achieved. Because John Wilson from the union, I can vouch for him. So far, we've collaborated in a strong way, in a staunch way, and John says what he does and does what he says. And I think John appreciates the fact that he is not doing this for himself, guys. Trust me, I can see that he's very genuine. And as a country, as a people in Australia, and share this broadcast to your friends because it's an important broadcast for people to listen to. If you can't, as a minimum, join the union, empower the union, and then go back and sit on the couch and watch. That's all you need to do. right?
Yep.
You might get an SMS, you might get an email, you might say, come down to this rally, go to this protest, go to this thing, go to this meeting, go to this boycott, go to this blocking of this or facilitating that or something, which is good. It's what we need because I love that as well. And I know you guys watching are thirsty for that, right? We need this. We need people deploying on the streets. The people in this union are ready, and there are already thousands and thousands of members. It's a very large membership base, very strong war chest, which John Wilson is building, right? A lot of people are joining this union. And the thing is, these people are good people, right? John, what's the price to join the union?
It's $200, Simeon, and we cut it to the bone. Union membership here, the cheapest union membership here in Australia is $1,000 a year. But on average, the Maritime Union, CFMEU, those people, you're probably looking at about $2,500 a year in union membership fees. Ours, $200.
Well, then when we look at the other unions, the CFMEU, it's a business plan. It's run as a business. They take the workers' wages. They take their 1.5% or 1%, whatever it is, of their wages. Then they make the workers buy the insurance from the union, and they make the workers give their superannuation to a union-affiliated super fund. So they extract as much as possible out of the worker, right? But the Freedom Union, although it's very welcoming to workers, you don't have to be employed or be a worker or be blue collar or be a wharfie or a tradie or an electrician or a plumber or a labourer. All right, you can be someone who is sitting at home watching today, thinking, "I want something to happen. I want to see something change." Right? Yes. Go to the website, join the union, and join your friends. You can go and fill in the form for your neighbour, for your mum, for your kid, for your friends. Get as many people as possible. Right? It's February now. I think in the month of February, we've got to have at least a few hundred extra people join. And that's what I'll commit. I'll commit that. I'll work on this because, at the end of the day, if we do this and if we join the union, and I have joined the union myself. Yes, I've joined the union, haven't I, John? As a member, I've gone to the website, I've clicked on it, freedomunion.org.
You're one of the early joiners, Simeon.
One of the...
you were one of the early joiners,
Another 1930s reference.
Yeah.
If I've done that, all right, I know something's happening, right? When I grow old, I can say, well, what did you do? Well, I can say, well, at least I joined the union. And I know, I can guarantee if you're in Australia and you're watching this, most of you can't say you've done something. I'm not saying that to offend anyone. But there are many good people watching this. There's Emma from Gosford. There's Emily from Victoria. There's Paul from Mornington. There's a lot of great people there watching who are always there, always in the front lines. These are people who camp at the front of the Governor General's office, who stand in front of Parliament, who face off with the police holding a red ensign flag, or who campaign in front of the Prime Minister's office, right? This is what these good people do. Now, there are many people like that.
Yes.
Who are on the ground crew, and doing a good job. But there are some people who wish they did more. Now, if you're one of those people thinking, what can I do? Join the union. I'm going to repeat it again. Join the union. I'm going to check how many people watch this broadcast. And guys, guess what? If you've done that, if you've joined the union, then the future is someone else's problem. Then the responsibility is on John Wilson's shoulders. Then the responsibility is on the union's shoulders to do something to make some change. Now, the question is, do you want to absolve yourself of that responsibility? The answer is yes. You don't want to live your life knowing that you did nothing and nothing will happen and there's no light at the end of the tunnel and there's no hope coming up. And next year is going to be the same as last year. And the next 10 years are going to be the same as the last 10 years. And nothing's going to happen because nothing is coming up. There is no plan. Tell me honestly, admit, watching this, you know that Australia is not going to change. You know Australia is not going to be saved. You know the election result, whether it's Liberal or Labor, it's going to be the same thing as it was before. And you know that nothing is going to get better. The government is never going to bring in legislation to help you. The Parliament is not there to support Australians, to help Australians or advance Australians or worry about their welfare. If you look at all the bills they've been passing in the last few years, all of these bills identify, disrupt, hate speech, foreign interference, misinformation, disinformation, censorship. What are all these bills for? This is what you call offensive bills, right? Offensive bills. This is when they're going on the offensive against the Australian people. And for example, we saw in the days of lockdowns and COVID what was happening in Australia, right? And although we're broadcasting on YouTube, censorship, it's even big tech is already saying, okay, it's too much, we can't hide it, and everyone knows that in the days of the lockdowns, the days of the COVID, the government got it wrong. They got it wrong to the extent where they should be guilty of murder and genocide against their population, if we want to call a spade, right? Yep. And who's going to hold them to account, right? It's a difficult task. It's very hard. And absolve yourself of the responsibility. Have a coffee if you're in Australia. It's in the morning. Make yourself a black coffee. If you like sugar, add sugar. I don't have sugar. George Gallo doesn't have sugar. I don't have milk. George Gallo doesn't have milk. But that's not the point. The point is have a coffee and join the bloody union. Yep. And then after you've joined the union, you can think to yourself, well, look, I can have a nice day because I've done something good, right? And go about and live your life and do your things, but at least you've got the union going. Can I say how hard it is with these new government laws, legislation, how hard it is. They want to stop people from associating. They want to stop people from forming up together and making, for example, a political party. It's extremely difficult to register a party now, a small party, minor party. They've brought all this legislation to stop. Spending caps. Even if you manage to get a party, right? You run an election. They'll say, and don't quote me on this, the exact number, someone in the comment section can advise correctly, but it's roughly plus, minus, give or take, something along the lines of you cannot spend more than X amount of money printing flyers or pamphlets, right? I think it's like $15,000 or something. I can't remember exactly, but it's a cap. Why would they cap the little guys, the mums and dads, the battlers from printing off flyers? It's absurd, and they want to call that a democracy because they know that the major parties have no problems. They've got millions of dollars, and they've got call flutes and banners and advertising and optics, right? And that's what they do to us. That's what they do. They trick us. They fool us. They laugh. While you die, while you suffer, while you pay tax to the pedophiles in Canberra, they laugh at you. They walk all over you. They rub their hands together like this, and they laugh, right? As they take your children and poison them, and they turn society against itself, right? And there's a reversal of this happening now. It's great to see what's happening in Washington, with Trump taking down all of the filth that's been just spreading, and it's a cesspool, really. It's a cesspool infecting the minds, the woke mind virus in the Western world. And again, Australia follows the United States, yes, and that's why Australia has been on the bandwagon. Now, how are these Australian leaders? How are the Australian leaders currently who were following the woke, ridiculous, idiotic agenda of degeneracy, right? Like, if you're a degenerate, be a degenerate in the toilet, but don't walk out of the toilet and announce to everyone, "Hi, I'm a degenerate, and I want you to be a degenerate, and I want your children to be degenerate." That's the difference, right? Yeah. That's the difference. So don't be a person like they used to have in America, like they still have in Australia, who supports the collapse of society, of Western society, right? I'm looking with a lot of hope at what Trump is doing. He's stopping what's happening. They're taking a stand. And the question is, how will the Australian government react to this? They're really lost, aren't they, John? Because they've been following the United States for decades and decades. And I can tell you, you as well as I do, that people in Canberra don't like what they see now. But what does Australia do? Australia must follow the United States. So again, the question, what's Australia going to do? Can Australia be saved? The parliamentarians in Canberra are in trouble. They've got an identity crisis.
Well, not only have the central bankers been defeated, right, by BRICS and by President Trump and others throughout the world. So not only have we broken the back of one of their biggest control systems that the planet's ever seen, which is the monetary system, okay, we are now breaking their back when it comes to the ideological war that underpins all of this, which is the debasing of the family, attack the family, debase the family, and debase Mother Nature. Okay, so we're now fighting back against that trying to get a bit of sanity back into the equation, and we're winning. These people who carry on with this nonsense, mate, are insane, Simeon. They are insane, okay? They are useful idiots for some very powerful forces that are out there, satanic forces. They are basically satanic forces which are aimed squarely against the family unit, the building block of life and all societies is the family.
And that's why they're against Russia.
They hate Russia. They hate Russia because Vladimir Putin and the Russian people know the value of families, and they have been protecting families and their way of life for hundreds of years. Okay, and they're prepared to sacrifice for it.
I mean,
Australians
everything
aren't.
that Putin's been saying, now Trump is repeating and Rubio is repeating. Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
We've done a complete
right.
360. Russia has been very consistent in its messaging, one of the only countries in the world which actually said no to all of this. And now the American government has seen the light and now repeating what Russia's saying.
Look, one of the things that I greatly admire about President Putin and the Russian people is this, Simeon, is that they really don't like expediency. They don't like making decisions just because it's politically expedient. The Russian people and Vladimir Putin like to do what is the correct thing to do, what is the right thing to do, and they think long term, and they are prepared to put some principle behind their arguments and what they stand for. America for too long, generation after generation have just been expedient. Anything that just keeps the machine ticking over, any silly decision or silly direction, they'll take it. Now that's all changing under President Trump. Now, no doubt President Trump is unusual, no doubt whatsoever. But the two greatest men on this planet right now is President Putin and President Trump. And we are very fortunate to have both of those men in play doing the work that they're doing, okay? Both of these men do not like war. President Trump has done no actions whatsoever to start any new wars, the first president to do so in many, many years. And President Putin is trying to stop a world war being engineered by these central bankers, okay, with what they're doing in Ukraine. We're going to find a lot of ugly stuff. We're going to find all sorts of biological, experimentation stuff that's been going on in Ukraine, organ harvesting, and you name it. It's an ugly place. It's an ugly place. And it's full of these neo-Nazi lunatics, okay, and they've got to be dealt with. They've got to be dealt with. They want to start a third world war. And President Putin is not going to allow that to happen, and neither is President Trump. Thank God for both men. There's a lot of other stuff out there, other issues and that they're grappling with that I don't know enough about. And I can't give any comment. But on those big ticket items, I love both these men. They are, badly needed in a world that's full of chaos at the moment.
Well said. Look, the world is changing very, very quickly. And congratulations if you've been on the right side of history. Congratulations if you're watching this, nodding your head saying, yeah, I knew all of this all along. And I've been saying the same thing as John and Aussie Cossack for the last 5 years. And you're not surprised as to what you're hearing. But we knew eventually this day would come. We knew eventually that this madness would stop. And all you had to do was stay calm and support Russia. If you look at the common factor through all these years, Russia has been consistent because Russia represents a separate matrix, a separate part of the world. It's a different, it's almost like a different planet. You've got the planet of filth and degeneracy, which is more or less NATO, right, and the NATO countries, and then you've got a border. And then you've got a country where there is none of this allowed. I mean, things go on in behind closed doors and so, but no one cares because no one cares what people do personally. People care what is presented to the public and what is taught in schools and what is promoted on a government level, on a media level, on a mass influence level. And what the West experienced was a mass psychosis of degeneracy, really degeneracy, where people are being turned away from religion, people being turned away from families and people being turned against each other, whereas Russia has been consistent. And the Russian people have been holding the line. Many Russian heroes, men and women, have been fighting. And this is why this war they were fighting was a war on behalf of humanity. Now we see why this was a war, why the Russian soldiers were fighting for the rest of the world's sake. Because if Russia fell, or if Russia was not able to hold the line and not fight, there would be no counterbalance. There would be no multipolarity. There would be no alternative, and at least an alternative for people like us to say, well, hang on a second. How come Russia's normal? How come Russian kids at the age of 7 know how to take apart a Kalashnikov, right? And the kids in the USA at the age of 7 are changing their gender, right? That's the difference. What they're being taught. Now, it is child abuse, of course, because this is what they've been doing, and they need to protect children, right? Parents in Australia are worried about their kids going to school. That's why homeschooling is very popular these days. Because they're worried about what the teachers are going to tell them. The lefty, Marxist, and again, nothing against lefties or Marxists, because of course we have many strong friends in the left and the Workers' Party, but the Workers' Party are not lefties. The Workers' Party are real staunch leftists like you, John, and the unionists, right? I've always had respect for those real leftists, such as the real people on the right. Because the real people on the left and right, they have a lot more in common than they realize.
People who don't want world wars, people who don't want genocides and war crimes. I mean, you don't have to be a lefty or a righty to wish those good things. I mean, who wants world wars?
Exactly.
They're trying to cover up their crimes, Simeon. They have committed genocide in the last 5 years, and we've got them. All the evidence. The union is lodging war crime after war crime after war crime. We're collecting the evidence. We have the evidence. They are gone here. They're cooked. They need to hide and cover up their crimes. And starting a world war is a good way of burying evidence, and that's what they've done historically. They start wars to hide their crimes. And this time, President Putin and President Trump are not going to allow that to happen. This time, they're going to be held accountable. Now, the people of Australia, I say, if you want to hold these war criminals, these criminals to account, right, do not rely on an utterly rotten and corrupt state police force, as they all are in this country. Don't rely on the Department of Public Prosecutions. You've got to understand, Simeon, we've had here in Australia, it was up on the Australian Federal Police website, we've had embedded inside of the Australian Federal Police top-ranking FBI officers from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In our Department of Public Prosecutions, we've had top-ranking American Department of Justice officials embedded in our institutions. When you have a look at how corrupt the FBI, how corrupt the Department of Justice and everything else is in America, come to Australia, they've poisoned us as well. We are rotten to the core, our justice system. There is no justice system in this country. There is a two-tier policing system and a two-tier legal system where they allow criminals to roam the street freely, and they jail community activists and advocates who want to advocate on behalf of the community. That's what we have in Australia. I know they wanted, or they did jail you, Simeon. They wanted to jail me for 2 years. I went to court and I got out of it. How I got out of it? By the skin of my teeth. 2 years they wanted to jail me over one Facebook post, putting a Facebook post up, saying something that they didn't like.
Well,
okay, Simeon?
Just to clarify for our audience, yes, I was jailed. I received a 10-month sentence simply for mentioning a name. I said a name. I named a very, very, you could say, controversial, dark character who is under the protection of a suppression order. And that is where, see, this is the suppression order system and the way they hide their crimes in the elite circles of Australia. That's striking at the heart of their filthy system. And that's what they use, suppression orders. So when you intentionally name a suppression order and recklessly do that, like as I did, and I pled guilty to it, I said I did it, okay? I had a good reason to do it, right? And that is not over, that story. Stay tuned. Eventually, that's going to be
more to
a
come.
very, very interesting story. And a lot of people are going to say, well, hang on a second, why was Aussie Cossack even jailed in the first place? And that's part of the reason why I surrendered to the Russian consulate, right? 815 days ago, because they wanted to send me back to prison. Maximum security as a national security interest, EHR NSI, it's called NSI, National Security Interest, EHR, Extreme High Risk. That's what they gave me as a classification. So they treated me as a terrorist, wearing orange overalls, legs shackled, arms shackled, a belt around my chest and arms shackled to the belt, right? In orange overalls. This is in a bulletproof Land Cruiser with another bulletproof Land Cruiser escorting with a special convoy of guards. Right? It's called the escort. Why couldn't I just go on a prison truck with the rest of the inmates, right? They gave me this special treatment because they were trying to demoralize me and trying to see if they could crack me and break me. But of course, it didn't work. And I said to them, I'm not going back to jail. I'd rather sit in the Russian consulate in some type of a self-imposed prison situation as someone who says, I would rather be limited in freedom of movement, but unlimited in freedom of political expression and unlimited in my ability to broadcast and to commentate and to bring news and commentary. And let's just face it, influence. Now, that's what they accuse me of. Foreign influence, foreign interference. But again, John, as the Russian ambassador once pointed out, he said to the Australian media, he said, hang on a second, Aussie Cossack's been in social media game, in the independent journalism game, in the influence game for many, many years before entering the Russian consulate. What he's saying, like right now, physically, I'm sitting inside the Russian consulate, right? Here we are, we're sitting here. And no, there is no diplomats here next to me telling me what to say. The Kremlin is an online one telling me, say this, praise Putin, or say this. It is what it is, right? You've got, you want to know what I'm thinking? There's nothing covert either. There's nothing covert about what we're doing. We're telling you what we're doing. We're saying we're backing a union. John's got a union. I'm backing the union. I'm joined as a member, and I want everybody else, all the Aussie Cossack subscribers, all have to join as members. If you've got respect for what I do, join the union. I don't ask for much. I don't ask for anything really ever, right? We do things ourselves, but I want this to happen. I want there to be a mass influx of membership, right? And watch the people in Canberra panic. Watch the powers to be, watch the politicians panic when they realize that there's change. Never in a million years will the CFMEU or the ANU or the mainstream unions, never in a million years will they be engaged in this type of banter and this type of organizational work, self-organization to change, for political change. Right? We actually have more chance, far more chance to achieve political change through a union than we do if we form a political party. You form a political party, they'll just find a way to deregister you. They'll find a way for you not to run a candidate. They'll say, oh, you didn't fill in this form. This form was late by 2 hours. You're disqualified. They do it all the time. They actually put you in jail if you haven't got the right paperwork. But with a union, as you have, you haven't got the constraints. You haven't got maybe the government will come up with it. I'm sure they will, as they say the freedom union.
They have a problem under freedom of association, international law, Simeon. It's clear. It's without any interference whatsoever from government. And that's what the law reads, okay? You cannot interfere with a trade union if it's operating under international law. And if you do, it's a crime, okay? So it's those unions that you speak of are registered with GovCorp, and GovCorp can do what they like. GovCorp can interfere as they see fit, And that's what they've done with the CFMEU. They've appointed an administrator in and sacked 117 of their full-time officials. Out you go. And they did it with the stroke of a pen. Under international law, they have no chance of doing any of that, which is why we have set ourselves up under freedom of association, why we are using the International Criminal Court. Why? Because all the courts here in Australia are rotten. They're all run by the Freemasons. We know all of this. You will never, ever get a just decision out of this system, out of any of these courts, any of them, because they're all run by a secret society. The police are all run by the Freemasons. Yet there is no law and order in this country. We have no choice but to take these matters outside of all of this national jurisdiction and place it in the international arena. And we are hammering them hard and holding them accountable. And they don't like it. They don't like it. Now, the more members I can get in behind us, Simeon, and the more war crimes I can lodge and the more pressure, we will do it. We will do it. Back us in. We have no other agenda. We are not connected to anything else. For anyone that's living overseas, watch what we are doing. We are not holding ourselves out to be, anything special. We're not trying to big note ourselves. What we are saying is this: the same international laws that the Freedom Union of Australia are using are available to you in Canada, you in New Zealand, you in England, you in Germany. The same laws that we are utilising, right, okay, are available to you. That's the first thing. And the second thing is just look at what we are doing. Look at our successes. Look at our failures, and maybe you in your country can set your trade union up in Canada, New Zealand, England, wherever. And if you do, and we would help if we can give any advice, any techo advice. We've got very skilled people who know this stuff back to front, ladies and gentlemen. We can help you. And if you've got a union in London or in England, we would love to trade with you. We would love to collaborate with you, etc., etc. And if we're holding a war criminal to account, it'd be great to have other trade unions around the world do the same, so we can really combine our efforts.
Speaking of that, right? So when we look at connecting with other trade unions all around the world, if you're watching, and I'm sure our UK audience who are affiliated with the Workers' Party will know all about this. The Soviet Union back in the days, for many, many decades, would attract and invite union delegates from all around the world to Moscow, yes, to Cuba. And the old unionists know what that's all about, big delegations. So I'm very sure that the future, the post-war future, when Russia achieves its victory, its well-deserved victory, and this war, this current conflict is settled in Russia's favor, and Russia achieves its aims. Russia is going to sit down, and I guarantee you, I will make sure I'm a part of this. I will be there lobbying for this. I'll sit down and we will look back in the last 3 years during the hostilities, who was saying what and who was doing what and who was involved in holding the line and supporting Russia in Russia's greatest hour, in Russia's greatest moment of need, when the whole world was against Russia. So there's going to be a time coming up after Russia's victory in the special operation, where we're going to sit down and we're going to figure out who's who and who is what and what happened over the last 3 years, because Russia's been too busy. Russia's been busy fighting a war, the front line of 1,500 kilometers. Not only that war, but a huge war, sanctions war, an economic war, a war on all of its borders, NATO aircraft harassing Russian airspace in the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, in the Arctic, everywhere around the place. Russia is busy. Russia's managing. Russia can handle it. Russia's a superpower. It's a great power. And they underestimate Russia when they say Russia's not a superpower. When you underestimate Russia and you underestimate the resolve of the Russian people, you actually inspire the Russian people to achieve more and to do more. And as we see today, in 2025 February, if we look back in the last 3 years, Russia has been right all along. And if you've been supporting Russia and you've been saying no to NATO, that means you've been right all along. Now the future is bright. There will come a time where we will sit down together and we will look at each other in the eye, shake each other's hands and say, good on you, well done. Thanks for holding the line. Thanks for being staunch. Thanks for not giving up. Right? We won't be able to do that with everybody, but I'll try and do that with many people as possible. And by the way, the union is a great way to facilitate that, to be amongst like-minded people, to be amongst ideological allies. Look at what's happening right now in Ukraine. It's a disaster. The special envoy Kellogg, who was appointed by Trump to figure out what's happening and try to negotiate a settlement to the end of this conflict, he has said that Zelensky is a liar. He himself, General Kellogg, appointed by Trump from the USA, has said Zelensky is a liar when he says he doesn't know where the $100 billion has disappeared to. Have a look at this.
Never received half the money that we've sent. We also have, you and the president asking to see an election in Ukraine. And talk about that. What is happening in Ukraine?
Robert, we're kind of scratching our head too. The United States of America, the American people, the citizens, have given Ukraine over $174 billion. And we have put inspector generals on the ground in Ukraine and here to track that money. So we have a pretty good accounting of where it's going. And when it comes to elections, look, every democratic state will have an election. We used to have elections during the middle of wars as well. And I think over term now, they can't right now because it's in their constitution, the Ukrainians not to have it till the cessation of hostilities. But you're going to reach a point where they're going to have elections. And that's a sign of a healthy democracy.
There you go. This is General Kellogg, the United States' own envoy. This is the bloke who Trump has appointed, right, to go in there from the president of the United States. And he is saying Zelensky's a liar. He's saying that Zelensky has misappropriated and $100 billion. This is ridiculous. It's great to finally see this happening because everything that's happened for the last 3 years is a farce under the Biden administration with Kamala Harris, with Hillary Clinton, with these sick Satanist people. Hillary Clinton is a Satanist. She's a sick person. She will go to hell and burn in hell because she doesn't believe in God. She's got no compassion. She's got no Christian values. She believes in the devil because she operates on behalf of the devil. Look how Hillary Clinton was laughing when they killed Gaddafi. Why did they kill Gaddafi? Gaddafi was a great leader. Gaddafi did what he wanted to do for his country, and he didn't care what anyone thought, right? And that's just one of the hundreds and thousands of crimes committed by the US administration, by NATO for all of these years. And the rhetoric is changing now. The rhetoric is changing. Honestly, if I could grab someone in Canberra and shirt front them right now, I would, right? But I'm locked in a Russian consulate. But I would shirt front them, in the words of Tony Abbott, and I would say, now do you see that we were right all these years? Now do you see that we were fighting? You were censoring us. You were trying to discredit us. You were attacking us. You were intimidating us. You were deplatforming us. You were demonetizing us. And we were right all these years. Now Washington themselves is saying we were right. Look at the president of the United States. Look at the FBI. Look at the CIA. Look what's happening in Washington. They are now they've done a full circle and they're saying, well, everything that we've been saying for all these years is actually on the right side of history. Russia's on the right side of history. Zelensky is going to be toppled and destroyed like Ceausescu in Romania was once upon a time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of him. And all those bastards out there who supported Ukraine, who had nothing to do with Ukraine. I understand if you're Ukrainian and you got a Ukrainian flag in your profile picture on Facebook or on Twitter, but all these operators, right? These operators with Ukrainian profile flags who didn't even know where Ukraine was on a map. They couldn't show you. They wouldn't know what the capital of Ukraine was. They had no idea. And overnight they become Ukrainian experts, right? And campaigning for Ukraine and demanding weapons. These morons have facilitated the demilitarization of Australia. We marched, we warned, we said, don't do it. We said, declare Australian neutrality. We marched in Sydney, we marched in Melbourne, in Perth, in Brisbane, in Adelaide, in Canberra. Australians march with Russian flags. Shout out to Paul from Mornington. Shout out to Emma from Gosford, many others, right? And we were right. These Australians that stood up. were right, that Australia should not have got involved. Now Australia has got the task of trying to figure out where it stands. It's like, for example, a clever mother-in-law will never back the son-in-law or the daughter in a fight. She'll just wait it out and say nothing and say, sort it out yourselves, right? That's what a clever mother-in-law will do. And see, the reason being is because the son-in-law and the daughter will make up, kiss and make up, have some great sex, have a romantic dinner, lunch, flowers, happiness, happy days, love and happiness. And the mother-in-law will sit there and say, well, lucky I didn't get involved. Look at them. They're friends again. They're lovey-dovey again. Right? Happy wife, happy life. Everything's good. Australia is like the mother-in-law that should have sat it out, shouldn't have got involved in this Russian special operation, right? But unfortunately, the Australian politicians, the government in Canberra, were infiltrated. There was foreign interference in Australia. And foreign interference was coming from the Ukrainian government and from US aid and their proxies and the CIA and everybody else who were convincing Australia to get involved in the war and send weapons, to the point now where Australia is basically completely demilitarized. What a disgusting situation. What a disgrace. How can you look yourself in the eye in the mirror and say that you're an Australian government employee, or you're a person who works in Australia's best interests, as we often hear them say, if you're responsible for the demilitarization of this country? There are no more tanks, there are no more missiles, there are no more artillery systems, because there's a global weapon shortage. The military hardware and gear that Australia had, it took Australia 60, 70 years since World War II to build it up. And then in the space of 2 years, from 2022 up to 2024, we demilitarized everything, all gone. Stock take sale, closing down sale, except there's no sale. It was given for free. What a disaster. Who is responsible for this? Who is going to be accountable for this? Right? I know that people who are veterans in the Australian military and current serving military personnel completely agree with what I'm saying, and have always agreed with what I was saying in terms of keep Australia out of it, keep Australia neutral. There's nothing shameful about declaring neutrality. Switzerland, always neutral, and the richest country in the world, highest standard of living. And they had wars going all around, World War I, World War II, everyone's killing each other, Switzerland just enjoying life, do nothing and win. And that's all Australia had to do, right? Australia had to do nothing and win. No, we were infiltrated. We were interfered with. We were influenced in Australia by the Americans, by the Ukrainians, to commit ourselves into a war. You know how difficult it's going to be now for the Australian government to repair its relationship with Russia. But it's okay. You've got people like Aussie Cossack who can facilitate something, right? And I can tell you straight away, when the sanctions are lifted, billions of dollars of trade will recommence between Russia and Australia. And I can tell you straight away, as a warning, a shot across the bow, if we see any weasels trying to take benefit and make money out of the recommencement of Australian-Russian trade, who during the special operation times were against Russia's interests and were operating against Russia and its special operation, we will make sure that you will not get a piece of the pie, right? There is a huge trade surplus in Australia's favor to be gained here. Australia made billions of dollars in exports to Russia. Russia hardly exported anything to Australia, but the main commodity, of course, that Australia could take from Russia and could import directly, alleviating the cost of living for millions of Australians all around the country, would be oil. There's so much money to be made for this country, for Australia, I'm saying. All they have to do is remove the embargo against Russian oil, which was put on in April of 2022 by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, to his own detriment. Russia did not suffer at all. Russia just simply started selling more oil to India and Singapore and China. And then Australia started buying more oil from India, Singapore, and China, paying an extra 30% on top. How stupid of the Australian government. But that was for the purposes of virtue signaling. Now, this government is so obsessed with virtue signaling that the virtue signaling often, more than often, takes precedence over reality, over common sense. Right? We do things for the sake of showing that we've done something. Right? AUKUS, $365 billion. The Australian government gave of your taxpayers' money for submarines that don't exist, that they might give Australia in the 2030s or the 2040s. It's a disaster. By the time we get to the 2030s and 2040s, you're going to have $500 underwater drones destroying submarines, right? Autonomously working AI swimming around the Pacific Ocean, right? Controlled by AI, right? That costs nothing. That's how quickly technology is moving. But that again, that's treason. That's treason, right? If you want to look for the real enemies, the real foreign interference in Australia, don't look at Aussie Cossack. Don't try and chase down people like John Wilson. Don't try to accuse the battlers, the freedom fighters, and the people who have been saying no all these years. You fire the opposite. You should be considering these type of people like John Wilson, for OAMs and Australian of the Year. And every single person that protested in days of the lockdowns, they should get an apology from the government. They should have an apology from the government, just as the government had Reconciliation Day where they said they're sorry to the Indigenous people. There should be an apology for everyone who has been mistreated by the government. We have plenty of comments in the comment sections. John is taking action for Australia. It's for our best. I don't see any other doing anything of this weight. Exactly right. And again, join the union. I'm interested to see, and I'll update you on the next show, how many people join the union during this broadcast tonight in the United Kingdom and this morning in Australia. But be sure to share this video, and we'll give John Wilson, the Freedom Union leader in Australia, his closing statement. Please, John.
Simeon, thank you very much. That was a great wrap up, mate, and a great expose on what's happening here in Australia. Simeon, look, you really cannot look at the size of the dog in the fight when it comes to the freedom movement union. You've got to look at the size of the fight that's in the dog. Okay, we're only a very modest player, and we're trying to build our ranks. Okay, but already we have a ton of fight and a ton of energy that we are, hell bent on discharging and getting out there and doing our best with. Simeon, if I can get some more numbers, if I can get some more people coming in and they're prepared to support this union, I can promise them we will have a huge effect. A huge effect. We are not a bit player here. We're a very serious player in the freedom movement. Freedom Union is in the freedom movement here in Australia at this point in time. We are a very serious player. So please, $200. Join the union. Keep in touch with us. Join our social media and keep in following our information releases and our stuff that we talk about on our social media channel. Go to our website, www.freedom-union.org. Check out everything that we've uploaded there. The important thing at the moment, Simeon, is that we've released our travel, which is our Geneva Convention, using your union membership in place of a license. Okay, so we've released that. We've released our war crime campaign. That is going very well. We've got over 100 war crimes now notified, and that is growing daily. Okay, very important, Simeon. The moment a person, our members, lodge a war crime, they become a protected witness. So if anything is done to that protected witness, it incurs further war crime charges and very serious consequence. So I need to get our members to notify, join the union, but notify these war crimes, and I need to get this happening ASAP. We've only just opened this facility up. We've got over 100 war crimes reported, and it's growing. Okay, that changes the legal basis. That changes big time the legal basis of those union members who lodge the war crime, because they become a protected witness, and any further actions against them really draw a heavy penalty. So please, ladies and gentlemen, here in Australia, join this union. Give us your support. We can be trusted with this mission. If you're from overseas, watch what we are doing. If we can help you, the same laws that we are drawing upon are all international laws. They are available to you in New Zealand. They're available to you in Canada, in London, and in Europe and elsewhere. If we can utilize those laws for good purpose and get good results, then perhaps you can as well. We are willing to share our successes with you and our failures if we get things wrong. If you want to set up a union overseas, approach us, talk to us. Again, we will share our learnings and those expertise. We will share it with you. We are a down under trade union, but we have a global. We want to embrace our global family that's out there. We are all brothers and sisters at the end of the day, including in Russia. You are our brothers and sisters in Russia, and I don't know how we're ever going to thank you guys enough over there for your contributions that you've made in this effort. So, Simeon, thank you, and thank you for promoting the Freedom Union. And I can't stress enough to all of your audience out there, now is the time the Freedom Union needs your membership and your support. We're 3 months old. This is when Freemasons, Zionists, and other secret societies, they're going to try and take us down while we're young and while we're not fully on its feet. That's when they'll attack us. So please come in and support us. And thank you again, Simeon.
Thank you very much. That was John Wilson, leader of the Australian Freedom Union. And you heard the man join the union. We've said it about 56 times in tonight's 1.5 hour show. But that's what it takes to reinforce that message. And a reminder, this weekend, if you're in London and you're watching, you're a UK viewer, be sure to head down to the Party Congress, the British Workers' Party, headed by George Galloway. Be at the Congress. It's this Saturday, the 8th of February to the 9th of February at the Pendulum Hotel on Sackville Street in Manchester. So be there, and we'll bring you an update next week on how that went. But in closing, tonight's this morning's show or tonight's show, depending on where you're watching from, is it comes at a time where the world is changing. The world is changing, and I want to dedicate the closing minutes of this video to all the good people in Australia who have stood up. There was a time where it was exceptional to be pro-Russian, where everyone in the media and everyone, your neighbors, the politicians, you're watching TV, were telling you Russia's the bad guy. But many Australians said no. And those Australians who said no, thank you to them. That was an exceptional thing to do. People like Michael Hayes of blessed memory, who passed away, and he didn't live to see the end of this conflict with Russia's victory. But there were many people that marched. And I think if we need to, we can call another national day of marches and rallies to reinforce the message which we put forward on day one, that Australia needs to stay out of this war. Australia needs to stay out of all wars in general, but specifically be neutral, be friends with Russia, stop supporting Zelensky, stop supporting Ukraine, not one more cent, not one piece of equipment or weaponry. Those 49 Abrams tanks, which are still on Australian territory, we need to keep them here. I don't care if we donate them to the RSL and they put them in front of the RSL as a memorial. Do what you want with them. Scrap metal them. Keep them in the storage. If there's a war, Australia needs every single piece of equipment it can get, right? In these wars, even tanks from the 50s and the 60s are in demand. Abrams tanks is a formidable tank still, right? So keep the tanks unless you want us to start marching. If the Australian government wants us to mobilize all around Australia, and it's not me I'm saying here, I'm locked in a Russian consulate, but it'll be all of you people watching, everyone out there, all the mums and dads, they will mobilize. We will mobilize. We will facilitate it. We will have people on the ground, on the streets, marching with Russian flags, with Australian flags. And I'll leave you with this video just to remind everyone how strong the pro-Russian sentiment is in Australia if you look through the lies of the government narrative. I'm your host, Aussie Cossack. It's been a pleasure watching No2Nato, and it's good to reminisce with this next video coming up.
Massive march for neutrality. It's amazing that so many Aussies are out here today having their say, marching for neutrality, to keep Australia out of the war. Anthony Albanese needs to wake up and smell the coffee and have a look at what's going on here. I want to say a big thank you to all the great Australians here today. Look at the sentiment here. People are saying no to war. People are saying yes to neutrality. People are saying that they disagree with Albanese's decision to send our troops or our money or our equipment overseas. All the streets are blocked off. The police have blocked off half the city. We've got many people here having their say, saying no to war, saying no to Australian involvement. Whatever happens overseas, that's overseas business. Australians have been dragged into overseas wars ever since the British colonised this place. Enough's enough. We have to stand up and say no. Albanese, no more Australian funding overseas for wars. Spend the money at home, spend the money here. We don't want our diggers or our money going overseas to the Zelensky regime. Doesn't matter what side you want to go for, Russia or Ukraine. Let's put Australia first. Well, there is no threat against citizens. We've got an approval for this.
That's right. So we're going to facilitate it. You play by the rules. You breach the rules, okay, and people, you display any offensive material,
Such as?
flags that.
Could you quote the legislation against...
It's a summary offences act. It's offensive conduct.
Which
causes offence, people? Summary offences.
Which particular flag would you think causes offence? I mean...
You know. We know, all right?
All right.
That's it.
All right.
That's it.
Honestly, sir.
That's it.
Which flag
That's it. That's it. I've been told.
None? Just the valve threat.
We want to know which flags are
Another
causing
threat.
offence.
It's offended by the alphabet, mate.